The Legend of Chunyang. Once there lived in the province of Chola, in the town of Namwon, a magistrate's son named Yi Mongyong. He had much literary talent and grew up to be a handsome young man. One beautiful morning, Master Yi Mongyong called his servant Pangja and asked him to show him a place where he might see wildflowers. Pangja led him to a summer pavilion near a bridge called Ujakyo, or the Magpie Bridge. Looking at the distant mountains, Yi Mongyong caught sight of a young maiden swinging beneath one of the trees. He asked Pangja about the lovely maiden and her attendant. He replied that she was Chunyang, a daughter of Wonmei, the retired Kisang entertainer. Pangja related to his young master that this young girl was not only beautiful but also virtuous. Yi Mongyong insisted that Pangja inform Chunyang that he wished to meet her. "Don't you know the butterfly must pursue the flower and the geese must seek the sea?" retorted Pangja. Just then, Chunyang, frightened at being watched, jumped down from her swing and ran toward her house. Pangja urged his master to hasten home so that his father might know nothing of his adventure. They went home immediately to sit at dinner with his parents. They went to Chunyang's house that same night. Yi Mongyong asked Chunyang's mother for the hand of her daughter. The old woman, thinking her dream had come true, gladly consented and said, "You're a youngman's son, and Chunyang is the daughter of a Kisang, so there cannot be a formal marriage. Writing your pledge not to desert her in a secret marriage contract will content us." Not long after the secret marriage, the servant brought Yi Mongyong a message saying that his father, newly appointed to the king's cabinet, was being recalled to the capital. Yi Mongyong, who was to accompany his father, went that evening to Chunyang and told her the bad news. The young couple was forced to say a tearful goodbye at the Magpie Bridge. She then gave him a ring. "This is my token of love for you. Keep it until we meet again." The new Namwon magistrate arrived soon afterward, and among his first words to his servant were, "Bring me Chunyang, the pretty girl I have heard of." Too terrified to disobey an order by the magistrate, Chunyang accompanied the servant, choosing her words carefully. Chunyang replied, "I am committed to Yi Mongyong. You have a heavy responsibility to the throne. It would be better to fulfill your duties and apply justice according to the laws of the country." Chunyang's defiance enraged the magistrate, and he ordered her taken to prison. Meanwhile, Yi Mongyong had arrived in Seoul, where he studied hard and learned all the famous Chinese classics. He passed the government examinations with the highest distinction, thereby qualifying for a position in the king's service. In congratulating him after the Monka examinations, the king asked Yi Mongyong, "Do you wish to be a magistrate or a governor?" "I should be appointed amhengusa," replied Yi Mongyong. Yi Mongyong, as an amhengusa, traveled around the country with his attendants disguised as beggars. They inquired everywhere after the needs of the people in order to assess the quality of local districts' administrations. Soon he arrived near Namwon and came to a small farming village where the people were planting rice. While working, the peasants sadly chanted, "We come out in the scorching heat, plow our fields, sow our seeds, and make the rice grow. First, we must pay tribute to the king, give a part to the poor, a part to travelers who come knocking at our doors, and save money for ancestral services. This would be all right if the magistrate did not squeeze us for even more, leaving us with hardly anything to eat." Much interested, Yi Mongyong approached and said, "I have heard that the magistrate of Namwon has married Chunyang and that they live together happily." One of the farmers stretched Chunyang's predicament. The farmer's anger shocked Yi Mongyong. Another person said that Chunyang is to be executed in 2 or 3 days. Meanwhile, Chunyang, in prison all this time, remained faithful to the memory of Yi Mongyong. She had grown thin, feeble, and sick. She had a dream about her garden. The flowers that she had planted and loved had faded. The mirror in her room was broken. Her shoes were hanging on the lintel of the door. The next day, a blind man happened to pass by her windowsill. She asked the blind man about her dream. I shall tell you what it means. These dried flowers shall bear fruit. The noise of the broken mirror will be heard throughout the world, and the shoes on the door indicate a large crowd visiting to offer congratulations. The evil magistrate called his attendants together and told them that he wished to invite all the magistrates of the nearby towns, and on that day, Chunyang shall be executed. Yemun-yong arrived in the town and went to Chunyang's house. At first, her mother did not recognize him, for he is wearing beggar's clothes. Yemun-yong still longs for Chunyang, and he wanted to see her. With Chunyang's mother, Yemun-yong appeared at the window, and Chunyang looked at him. She reached for him through the bar and struggled to be as close to him as possible. I may be a beggar in dress, replied Yemun-yong, but I have no beggar's heart. Dear heart, said Chunyang, how hard your journey must have been. Go back with my mother and get some rest. Come to my window again in the morning so I may have the joy of seeing you once more before I die. Then Yemun-yong entered the palace a second time the next morning by climbing on the shoulders of his servants and going over the wall. The first guest he encountered was the magistrate of Unbong named Park Yongjang. Yongjang, feeling some compassion, called one of the kisangs and asked them to bring something to the beggar. Yemun-yong extended a poem for Yongjang's generosity. Yongjang was greatly alarmed for the poems against the magistrates. Rising up, he suddenly pretended to have an urgent business elsewhere and fled. The other officials likewise sprang to their feet and stampeded out of the room, only to be stopped by Yemun-yong's men, who were waiting outside with their swords. The officials soon understood that the beggar poet was in fact an amhengosa. Yemun-yong ordered the magistrates' runners to fetch Chunyang from her cell. In the magistrate's courtyard, the royal secret inspector, who was sitting behind a screen, questioned her sternly. If you do not love the magistrate, will you love me and come to me, the king's envoy? If you refuse, I shall order my men to strike off your head immediately. Chunyang declined and accepted her impending death instead. Yemun-yong then ordered the courtesans to untie the cords that bound the hands of Chunyang. Yemun-yong was deeply touched by Chunyang's defiance for her loyalty and love to him. He took off his ring and ordered a courtesan to show it to Chunyang. She saw that it was the very ring she had given to her husband Yemun-yong, and, lifting her eyes, recognized her lover. The people shouted joyfully and cheered for Chunyang and Yemun-yong. And they both lived happily ever after.